All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about character. And character in business, my belief, is really everything. You know, when we're born, we're just an empty slate. And our parents teach us about character. They teach us about doing the right thing, not being a bully. So we grow up with these important, essential tools as children. I mean, nobody comes out of the womb or in the first few years of life. No parent teaches you, be a bully to get ahead, right? It's okay to cheat just a little bit. No, they teach us to be kind, to open the door for our neighbor, for the person we don't know, to help, right? So I believe so much in character, and I think that's gets lost so much in business. We start to focus on those bottom lines, and we forget about those important things that we were raised with, and it reflects in business. So I think if we take care of our customers, if we take care of our neighbors, if we take care of our employees, if we take care of our friends, we're not only going to feel better as human beings, but we're going to do better in business. But company culture, character is important. If you're struggling with it, think about mom and dad. Think about how you were raised, and think about how you want to be treated. And I talk about all this for one reason. Our guest today is all about character. He's built this company from nothing, and it's so exciting to see somebody that was in the trades and learned a trade, changed his life, and he took that and with character and with style, he's built a company that he sold and is now rebuilding again. And his story's great, and I can't wait for you to hear more about it, because he's going to drill down. And what he will tell you, you got to take it to heart. You got to listen. You got to take notes, because so many important little nuggets in this is going to be a great half hour for us here. So without anything else, I want to introduce Chris Lacquement. Tell me about those early days.
Okay.
And how you got this trade of wood. And what do you do, Chris?
Okay. So I'm in the pet grooming industry. I have brick-and-mortar locations, and I'm also in the mobile pet grooming industry. I'm hyper-focused on pet grooming. I've dabbled in boarding and daycare and things like that, but I really just found that my passion is pet grooming.
And it's interesting, and it's kind of cool, because you guys know I'm in dog rescue, and so we rescue pups. He cleans them up. It makes them feel good, and especially the work you're doing with these rescue dogs. But so you have mobile grooming facilities,
yes.
and brick and mortar
stores.
Take me back to day one.
Okay.
Before you knew anything about grooming.
Okay. So I'll start with character, which is what you opened with. And my experience was a little different. When you say think back about your parents and, think about your mom and all that stuff, my experiences throughout my childhood and my jobs and, dead-end jobs that I had throughout, my younger life, my early 20s, I had a lot of bad examples. But I was able to take the things that I didn't like and say, well, I just don't want to do that. So just for example, one of my first jobs grooming for somebody, my boss was terrible. I had a terrible boss. All they cared about was the money. A customer would come in, they were unhappy with something, and they'd argue with them about refunds and give them money back. And oftentimes I'd be sitting in the background going, well, if it was me, I'd have just given the money back, apologized, and I would have caught him next time, and I'd have made it up to him. And so my experience was a little different in that I had a lot of bad examples, that I was able to say, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to handle people like that.
In your family, it wasn't the warm and fuzzy, sit by the fire,
No.
mom and dad situation.
I've structured my life being the opposite of what I witnessed.
Wow.
And so that's where I got my character from, and what was important to me is
So
not
how did
being
you learn
like
that,
people.
though? So did you have friends that you would visit other homes and see how families were functioning? Where did you see that
I
big
saw
difference? And
that.
at what age was
I
all
did
of
see that, but it was a lot of it was the way that I felt, the way that I was made to feel, and the experiences and things that I had that I never wanted to make other human beings feel that way.
it? Oh my gosh.
So with my parents growing up and how tough that was at times with my stepdad, and you know, then early on having jobs where I was mistreated and taken advantage of, and you know, you hit the ceiling and there's nothing that you can do, and you're just, you know, you're being used, and so I made a commitment and a promise to myself that throughout my career and as I was building, that I would make sure that the people that I employed didn't have ceilings.
All right. So how did you not just be angry and go the other direction? You know, because there had to be a line there. You know, and I don't know if it's a conscious decision, because many kids that go through the tough times, some of them become very angry,
Right.
and go the other way. You know, what did you?
Well, I had a baby early. You know, 21 was, I have 4 children, and 21 was when I had my first child. And at that time, I still was kind of that lost soul, just running around trying to figure out what I'm doing. I didn't even know what pet grooming was still at that time. The dogs that we had growing up were cattle dogs, and you know, they were out in the fields running around, and that's just what happened. If the hair started falling out, then you just had a bald dog. You didn't take it to the vet. You didn't take it to the groomers and things like that. That's just how I was raised. So, basically, to not, you know, be consumed by that stuff, I think that my firstborn is what changed me. When my first, and I have a note written on my mirror to this very day right now in my house, and it says, "Be the father that you needed as a child." And I've lived by that. I breathe by that.
Please give me some.
And so that's what it is. And so when my firstborn was born, I knew in that moment that I had to become a person that I'd never seen before. And the only way that I could do that was to start doing the opposite of things that I had seen. So whenever, you know, I would make a mistake as a young child in the way that I was handled and treated, I said, well, I know how that feels, and I don't want to make my kids feel that way. If you're not aware that the family and the people that are around you and your loved ones are, that's really honestly and truly what matters. And the rest is just noise.
Yeah.
It's just part of life. You need money to survive. But
And isn't it amazing when you can take that philosophy and bring it into your business and your family, and I hate to call people employees, but the people you work with become an extension of that, you know, and you care for them. And if you do, you care for them like you care for your family. Obviously, you love your family more. They're everything, right? But when you take care of these people, they'll always take care of you, and it's such a more harmonious experience, right? When everybody's together, and we talk about those cancers out of the mix.
My answer would have been, you cut it out. That's what you have to do. I unfortunately, and I've had to do this before, I've had to let go of my top performers because, you know, they couldn't leave their personal lives at the door, and it just kind of, you know, rolled down to everybody else. And you know, whether they were taking something out on somebody or just venting constantly about what's going on in their personal life. You know, there's always different scenarios, but for me, it's all about the culture. I don't hire based on experience. I hire based on attitude and maintaining the culture. So if I had somebody that came in and they used to own their own business and they have all this experience and they're so great, it's almost a red flag at times.
Interesting.
Whereas if I'm focused on pet grooming, I would rather have somebody that's fresh out of grooming school, still inexperienced, can't do it themselves yet. And if I'm putting numbers on it, I'd rather have a 5 that I can train to an 8, 9, or a 10 than somebody that has an 8, 9, or a 10 with a bad attitude.
Right.
All day long, every day, I would rather train somebody.
You can train somebody to do a job, right? But you can't train them to
You can't
be a
train
better
a
person.
better attitude. You just can't
No.
do it. You know, you just can't do it. And when people get stuck in those ruts and they just have those bad attitudes and they bring it to work constantly, they absolutely need to be removed, regardless of what they're generating for you. Because in the long term, it's going to hurt you worse.
Let's go back to when you first started, the fella that trained you.
Okay.
Because I heard a story about your commitment to that. You knew nothing about grooming,
Nothing.
but you saw an opportunity, and the opportunity was hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was about 10 hours away. It was in South Texas, Brownsville, Texas.
Okay, can you kind of tell me a little bit about that? Because we're talking about making a career change or just a life change, right?
So early 20s, still just kind of wandering aimlessly. I was working as a tattoo artist. I was creative. I could draw, an artist. But the dynamic of a tattoo shop with, being in a young relationship with a young child was very difficult. The hours were difficult. The environment was difficult. It wasn't the best environment for a young family. And so I was encouraged by a lot of people around me to look for something else. And I didn't know what to do because this is all I'd been doing. My aunt remarried down in South Texas. My mother's side of the family is from Brownsville, Texas. And when I went down there and met with them, she was remarrying to a gentleman that owned a pet grooming business. And he had one store, and he had a house on a near a golf course in the community, and he had a new truck and a boat, some jet skis, pool. And one thing that stuck out to me was that he had a baby grand piano in his living room. And he didn't even play, but he did have the baby grand piano in his living room. I think somebody else played that. And when I saw it, I said, I want to have a piano in my living room. I don't know why. I just did. So I asked him, I said, what do you do? And he said, I'm a pet groomer. And at that time, I was probably about 25 years old, and I still did not know that it existed. And I went back home and told my son's mom, I said, I asked him if he would teach me, and he said yes, but it would be an apprenticeship, and it would require me moving down to South Texas. So I went back and I told my son's mom, I said, this is my opportunity to do something different, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Are you okay with it? And I packed my bags and I went back and I lived with him for free. I did an old school apprenticeship where I started on the phones, sweeping the floors. Eventually he let me bathe dogs, and then eventually I was roughing dogs in. And he was pretty hard on me. He was a very, very nice guy, but he was very strict on his standards of his business. It was a high quality business. And I remember one particular time when I was bathing a dog, and I, had pushed it to him because he was grooming, and I in no way, shape, or form cut a corner. I thought I did a good job. He brought it back and he put it back in the bathtub, and he said, when you have your own shop, if you want to bathe like this, that's fine. But here, we're going to do it like this. And wow. I remember those words all the time, over and over and over. And I've even said it to people. Because one, he told me that I was going to have my own shop one day. So he told me that he believed in me, but he also corrected my behavior at the same time, which I didn't know. It was just a lack of training. But
wow, that's powerful. And for CEOs and guys that are mentoring today, we need to remember that. As we're bringing somebody up, we can't just stand over them as an authoritative figure.
Right.
Say, you're going to be here, and when you're here, you can do it whatever way you want.
I worked my way up in that shop in an apprenticeship, and after some time, I want to say maybe 8 months or 12 months, something like that, I kind of got to a point where I felt like that I could do it on my own. What's interesting about the way that he taught me was that he left out a lot of tools that are in the trade, that were like guards and clipper combs and things like that, that what he considered to be cheating. So I learned with
Interesting.
scissors. We scissored everything. We used scissors. It was
Really?
his old way of doing things. And when I came back to Dallas,
There
after
weren't
I-
the zzz.
we had clippers, but we didn't use the guards that go on top of the clippers that give you extra links. So
Yeah.
if it wasn't a certain length, if it wasn't a shave down, then we scissored the dog with a pair of scissors. Like we actually would sculpt the dog's hair. And you know,
That's
what's
art
interesting
right
about
there.
this is that in Brownsville, Texas, I think these grooms were probably $28-$30 a piece, and we're actually hand scissoring entire dogs. I mean, this is not an expensive market down there. So when I came back to Dallas, and my first job, I was working for a vet clinic, and the previous groomer that was there had written notes on the haircuts for the customers, and I got my first dog, and it said, you know, O-guard on it, and I called my uncle and I said, "What's an O-guard?" And he said, "Oh, well, that's cheating. So I never taught you how to use it." And well, I went out and bought some guard combs, and I started using them, and it cut my time down in half. But knowing how to do something that they don't teach anymore in schools, I learned it. I learned the old school way of doing things. So now I'm this young groomer here in town that has a skill set from an old school groomer that there's no other groomers around that have that skill set. Everybody learned how to only use clippers and just change out your guards, and they're not strong on the scissors. So I came back to Dallas with something that I would say most people here didn't have that skill, and that's kind of where my success started, was how I was taught
Yes.
down there in South Texas.
So and obviously it takes longer
Mm-hmm.
to groom by hand with scissors, and the question is, do you pass that trait on at all when you're teaching your young group?
I do, and so again with the training, I train more than I hire people that are already trained. And whenever I started having success in the industry, I called my uncle, and it's funny because now whenever my aunt and my uncle are together, my biological aunt, I will introduce them as a joke as my uncle and his wife. Because he changed my life. He did. And
That
so
is
she always, you know,
precious.
but it's just a little joke that we have.
He's got to be so proud of you. And
He is, and I
my
call him, and you know, I called him and I said, you know, listen, his name's Rod Ford, and
what a great name.
yeah, his name's Rod Ford, and I
be a
call
movie
him and I
star.
say, listen here, I don't think you understand what you did for me, and what I've done with that, what you taught me. How can I repay you? And what he said was, don't let my way of teaching die with me. That's all that he wanted.
Oh, my God.
So not only do I have an organization in his name, it's the Rod Ford Initiative, which I use the proceeds from that to help with people that can't afford their grooming, or if I see people, you know, making two different charges on a card to pay off a $50 bill, I'll just tell them I'll take care of it, and I use that. So I did that in honor of him, but also I teach the way that he taught me, which was my commitment to him, is that the way that his mom taught him to groom, because I'm third generation now. His mom taught him, he taught me, and now every single person that comes into my shop that works for me, they learn the exact same way.
Dude, I've got to tell you, the character that you have as a human being is unbelievable, because a lot of people would just go, okay, old guy, now I'm going to go make money. And you are doing something to create this legacy that came so far before you were even born. Carrying that on is so powerful, so important.
You know, I told you a little bit of my childhood. On top of just teaching me how to groom, he also was the first man that was ever in my life that was a good, solid man. He was a good man. So I not only was I learning from him picking up a trade, but he also was teaching me how to be a man at the same time. So I owe everything to Mr. Rod Ford. He won't take anything from me. He won't take money or gifts or anything like that. I've called him and said, hey, move over here. I'll give you a shop. You don't have to groom in it. Just sit in the front and do what you do and be retired. He won't take anything from me, though. He just wants me to keep his way of doing things
what you're
alive.
giving him is a legacy that'll go on forever. It's bigger. It's much bigger than money.
Right.
Yeah. So, wow, that's so powerful and exciting, because you made so much more out of your life. It's just not a business, but it's so much more. We talk about character, and I want to hear how you pass that on. I know you teach the system. You teach how to cut hair your way, Rod Ford's way. And you're carrying that on. But what else are you giving these young students, these new groomers coming into your business?
So that, going back again, everything is not from a negative place, but going back again to having employers. When I came back to Dallas, one of my first employers, they were a bottom line profits P&L employer. They didn't care about the customers. They cared about the money, how much we were generating for them. And so I learned a lot of bad things from them that I didn't want to do. So again, just doing the opposite. One of the main lessons that I learned from them was 3 years in a row working for them, I made $69,500 and $70,500. So within 3 years, my 1099 was within $1,000, and I didn't do anything different. I took different vacations. I tried harder this year than that year, but I knew after that third year I'd hit the ceiling. And so I went to my employer and I said, I feel like I've hit the ceiling in this business. And because I was the top performer in the business, she gave me a little bonus. And I was like, ooh, this is a nice check. And, it bought a little bit more time. And we did that a couple times. And then I realized that I was trapped in this job, and that they were using, money and little bonuses here, $5,000, whatever, to keep me trapped. And at that point, I made a commitment to myself that if I ever was in the position that they're in, I would make sure that there was no ceiling for anybody that worked for me. Wow. And that regardless of whether I felt like that I would lose them, that I would offer to either help them to get into business for themselves, go into business with them, or just wish them luck and just be positive and happy about them, even though it is hurtful at times to lose somebody that's, making money and making you a lot of money. I made a commitment to myself that I would never try to keep people in the position that they're in, ever. And I've continued to do that. And everybody that I interview or that I talk to, they get the same spiel. You can be more than a groomer here if you want to.
Tell me about you're in this job. How did you, because it takes somebody special to like go off on your own. Okay, I'm gonna dive into this thing.
So I went to my employer a couple of times. I got a couple bonuses, and it bought a little bit more time and kind of stalled me out a little bit. But I knew that, I could do better. I knew I was destined for more, and I just felt it. So I approached and asked them if they would be interested in a partnership where we attached a mobile business to their existing business, which didn't have mobile. It was boarding, daycare, and grooming. And I got an okay, and I think now I believe that they didn't think I was going to do it. So I saved $18,000 over the course of the next year. I saved $18,000 and I bought a trailer. And when I bought that trailer, I went to my employer and I was excited. the deal that I made with them is that I would work for them still full time, and then on my days off, I would work for myself, but I wouldn't wrap anything and I wouldn't market anything. So I would just do word of mouth only, and it wouldn't affect the business at all. And the moment that I got that trailer, they let me go.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
it
cold
put me,
blooded.
yeah, it put me in a position. But again, with the lessons, and
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it because
It
I don't
forced
know.
you to.
It forced me, sink or swim.
Yeah.
So I hooked that trailer up behind my Nissan Xterra, and I drug it around the neighborhood, grooming dogs, and I eventually got that business to where it was so busy and it was booked out 6 weeks that I was losing customers because you wait 6 weeks to get your dog groomed, something happens, you get sick, you go on vacation, you need to change it. I don't even have anywhere to reschedule. So I opened a store in the neighborhood, and it was just a little 1,000 square foot facility. I put a bathtub, one grooming table, and I used my receptionist that was working for the mobile business. I put her in front of the store and I said, do both and I'll give you more money. And she said, okay. And I was just using it as overflow. Hey, I can't get you in, but if you come here, then I'll work you back into mobile next time. And in a very, very quick time, both of these businesses together were generating millions of dollars.
Wow.
Together.
Wow.
And that's when I started. That was my first experience with like having success and everything, but it just went crazy. The neighborhood loved us, and
How
that's
good a
where it
feeling
always
is
started.
that? You go, thank you for letting me go because you pushed me.
Correct. Yeah. And to this very day, that couple, they still aren't very happy with me, and they don't like me, and
Really?
they feel as if I wronged them in some way. But I never did anything. We're talking about character. I've always been honest and open, and I answered the phone when people called me or found me on social media, but I've never moved or handled myself in a way that was stealing from anybody else. That's just not in me.
Well, I think it's their loss, and they have this thing that's weighing on them, which they shouldn't. They should be proud and applaud it and go, congratulations, this
Right.
is so great. We're, because competition breeds more business.
Right.
People forget about that. They think, oh my God, these competitors. But no, it just gets more people thinking about dog grooming,
Well,
right?
CVS and Walgreens are always across the street from each other, and that's what I always use. And I don't view other businesses as competition. Most of the mobile pet grooming businesses in the city that I'm in, I've consulted and worked with them, and these people are direct competition. It's not unrealistic for one of my vans to be parked here and them be parked at the neighbors.
Yeah.
And yet I still am going to dinner with these people, and I'm still helping them. And, a lot of times I didn't even charge them because my uncle asked me to give the information away for free. And so I felt like that the more that I consulted, the more that I helped other people, the more that I was honoring him. Yeah. So I just keep giving the knowledge away, And there's a lot of other businesses that have popped up that I've helped grow, double and triple in size, that are direct competitors of me right now today. And I still don't in any way, shape, or form feel threatened by that because it has absolutely nothing to do with my success or what I'm doing.
Well, your character, I think, has everything to do with your success. And let's talk about how you scaled this thing and then to eventually sell it and then get back in it, because this is fascinating, because scaling is something so many people have a problem with. They're a mom and pop, one store. How do I do that? Because it's scary.
It is scary. It's definitely scary. So for me, early on, I definitely was one of those people that felt like that if I didn't touch everything and I didn't do it myself, it wasn't going to be done right. And so I had a big problem with scaling. There's only so big you can get whenever you're doing everything by yourself.
Yeah.
I felt like that I needed to answer every phone call. I needed to reply to every email myself. And, every complaint, I wanted to call them personally. I wanted to do everything. Well, about 8 9 months into after I launched the mobile business, I was working 7 days a week, 12 hour days. 5 in the morning, I'd get up, start doing the phones, emails, and all that stuff. Hit the road 7, 8 o'clock, groom dogs all day, come home, catch up on all the phones and emails. And I wasn't healthy. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't sleeping right.
Making a lot of money, probably.
I was. That's the only thing that I was doing, is just making a lot of money and growing the business. But I got sick.
Yeah.
I came home and I was walking up the stairs to my condo one day, and about halfway up the stairs, I felt real weak. And so I made it up the rest of the stairs. And, I told my wife now, I told her, I said, I don't feel good. And I laid down and rescheduled a couple days of dogs, and I thought I had the flu. Went down to the Minute Clinic. They diagnosed me with the flu, and they gave me some medication and sent me home. And about a week later, I was worse. So at this point, I tell my wife that I need to go to the emergency room, and she takes me to the emergency room, and they bring me through. And I was in the emergency room for 6 days.
Jesus.
Not the emergency room. I was in the hospital for 6 days, intensive care. And I was in a room, and, I had all these things hooked up to me, and I was really, really struggling. And eventually they found out that I had this virus that, pretty much you have to either be like really old and sick or maybe an infant or something to get. It just was like letters and numbers. It wasn't like it's just a very common everyday thing that most of the time people don't come in on their deathbed. Grown adult men don't come in the hospital on their deathbed because of this. But I had worked myself to an illness.
Yeah.
That's what I had done. And at that point, I realized that it took me 6 weeks to get back healthy enough to go back to work.
Oh my.
I was sick. And so I hired somebody that I knew that was in the industry as well. I hired her, and she wasn't necessarily the best hire that I've ever made or anything like that. So I was really, really concerned. I was really desperate, and I thought, this is the beginning of the end of that business, right? So, but it didn't. It didn't sink. It didn't fail. I wasn't overwhelmed with negative reviews and complaints, and all of a sudden I learned my lesson on delegating.
How big did you scale, and how did the purchase happen? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so that particular business. So again, that particular business, I'm learning business lessons and life lessons as I go. I didn't learn. I learned how to groom from my uncle, and I learned how to treat customers and things like that. But I didn't necessarily learn how to run a business.
Right.
And even him, with all due respect, he had the one store, so it wasn't what I was doing. I was doing something that was growing bigger and faster, and so I had to, I had to learn very early on that in order to scale, I had to delegate, and I started doing that. I started hiring, and I removed myself from the vans, and I started being more customer focused and focusing on the business. But I still had a lot of business lessons that I hadn't learned. And so as this business grew, I got to 7 vans and, a couple stores at the time. As it was growing, I had to, I still was getting overwhelmed a lot. I still was taking on too much. And
what was the biggest hurdle when you got to 7 vans, 2 stores? How many employees?
Still, honestly and truly, at that time, probably maybe 15 employees or something like that. Maybe 15, 20 employees.
What was your biggest hurdle at that point?
Honestly, it's probably still delegating. I learned that I needed people to grow, but I still had, trust issues that I had to sort out, that I realized those are my issues. It didn't have anything to do with the business. It was just a lot of personal things, and experiences and things like that. But my biggest hurdle in scaling was absolutely learning how to relinquish control of things and allow other people to do their job, and trusting them to do.
But in what facet of the business? All facets? I mean, where was your biggest pain point, and where was the easiest transition, right?
Right. So I would say that.
In the numbers, the finance side, were you?
I mean, yeah, definitely on the finance side. Again, no business background. I'm not, still to this day, not great with spreadsheets and PNLs and things like that. I send that stuff off to have somebody else do it, right? And I think that was the number one thing that I started having a lot of money coming in, but I didn't know what to do with it. You're dealing with the IRS, you're dealing with, your unemployment tax, you have all these taxes and all this business and finance stuff. And I would absolutely say that was and still to this day is not something that I look at a lot. I don't look at P&Ls and numbers. And if somebody said, hey, I want to buy your businesses today, can you send me some P&Ls? I don't have them readily available. I will have to take the numbers and send them off and get them created.
And that's okay, because 90% of the businesses out there that aren't public companies or in the big, the smaller businesses, everybody has that tax struggle that,
Right.
I mean, as for small businesses, it's just very, very, that's one of the big laboring point, unless you were an
Come from that
accountant.
background or something, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, most entrepreneurs are these visionaries. and
I
they're
was
like,
freestyling for a long time. That's what I call it. I just said
Yeah.
I was freestyling, and I'd have meetings with people that were successful, and had much bigger businesses and in this industry and other industries, and they would say, well, what are your systems? What are your processes? And I would say, yeah, well, I mean,
that's a thing.
I come up with it as I go, and so I think that probably was the number one struggle that I had, and ultimately why I decided to sell the business, because I hadn't established systems and procedures that are uniform, that if this happens, this is what we do. If this happens, what we do. So that means that any time that something went wrong, I got a phone call.
They're calling you.
Yeah. And that was overwhelming. And that, although my business that I sold was a spectacular business, it was a great business, and I regret selling it, but I sold it because it was stressful to me. And I felt like that a company that had systems and procedures in place would be able to take that and do something with it that I didn't know how to do. And
Yeah, let me ask you a quick question, because we talked a lot about the downsides and the stress and the pressures. What were the big wins? You got 7 vans going, 2 brick and
Stores.
What was the wins for you? Where did you get to smile and go, hey?
Well, I don't think at that point I was looking at wins. So I was looking down at the ground. We've talked about the negative, and because of a lot of those negative things, I was working. I wasn't even viewing it as growing a business. I just was working and doing what I do day in, day out. It wasn't until even after that business was sold and I was able to take a step back and relax a little bit, because, now I had a little bit of change, and, I still had some money coming in from my couple stores and things like that. So I said, I'm going to take a break for a minute. And, about 3 months later, I was like, this is not fun. I need to get back to work.
I gotta get in.
But I knew that when I got back into it, I didn't want to do it the same way. I wanted to do it different. I wanted to do it. So then I started thinking about, what is it that I enjoy about it? What's the parts of the business that I enjoy?
There we go.
And let me just hyper focus on that, and then delegate the things that I don't like to other people. Maybe they're stronger at it. So when I started the second time is when I started bringing people in that, they were able to balance out my weaknesses and just hyper focus on what I love to do, which was building the business, and just focusing on quality of service and customer service, which I love talking to people, and I love giving more than they expect. That's also something that my uncle taught me, is that if somebody came in and they said, hey, I'm going to get my dog's haircut. Would you mind filing the nails and brushing the teeth? And we said, okay, that's going to be $20 extra. And they said, okay, well, never mind. Then we did it anyways.
See, that's awesome.
And that's what I, to this very day, try to tell everybody that I work with. It's like, yeah, I mean, whether they can pay for it or not, like when you go to, an old lady's house and you see her skin and it's very easily scratched and you can kind of see the little blood marks on her skin and things like that. I said, cut the dog's nails properly, grind them down, and make sure that when that dog goes back in, that it's not going to tear her up, regardless of whether she wants to pay you for it or not.
I mean, that is...
So just be aware of your surroundings, and when people ask you for something and then change their mind about it within reason, do it for them anyways.
When I asked you what were the wins, and you said, I said, heavy wins. I was just head down. I'm just going. You had so many wins.
I didn't recognize it at the time.
You didn't recognize
Yeah, I couldn't see it at the time.
Every time you helped one of these people, you got a little shot of adrenaline. It helped you, but you didn't accept it.
No, I wasn't.
But you were getting it.
There. I wasn't.
Every time you got a new van, every time you trained a new groomer, every time you brought somebody in, they were helping other people too because of your work ethic, because of what you taught them. All these people were winning, which you didn't understand how to accept that and be able to take a breath and sit back. And that's so important because we have our head down in life. We're going and we're not simple, not smelling the roses.
Celebrating the wins on a daily basis.
Yes, no matter what they are.
Right.
But if we think about those little wins, or when we come home and that little dog's shaking that tail so bad, the little hind's moving.
The kid said, "Dada."
Those little wins, we gotta remember that is what's important. It's not what we're leaving.
It's not.
There.
It's not. That's absolutely 100% correct. And that's why whenever I had the opportunity to start over and rebuild my brand and my companies and build them up, I decided that that's what I was going to focus on, was the things that I loved about it, which is helping people, bringing in these people that are motivated, that don't necessarily know how to do it themselves. And, they're really strong at, grooming and things like that, but they don't necessarily understand the business. And I've already taught myself things the hard way. So why not bring partners in? Why not take these people? And then, even though I was having a lot of wins before, that's when I really started feeling that I was doing something good. Yeah. When you take somebody that is coming from a job that's making $600-700 a week, and you train them up, and then they're working for you making six figures, and then they eventually even make six figures grooming dogs, which is excellent. Then they come to you and say, hey, I want to do even more. And then you take them from there, and then you put them in their own stores, and then they're on their second store, and they're on their third store.
It's life-changing.
Then all of a sudden you get to see people buy their first house. Yeah. I go some of my stores, and I see the cars in the back compared to whenever I hired them. And I get to watch them buy new cars, and take vacations and buy homes.
How does that
and things like that. That's when I started actually feeling the wins. And then that's also when I realized what it is that I enjoyed about the business and the industry and what I was strong at.
Right.
Which is taking people from a position that I've been in once myself, because I fully understand it, and giving them opportunities to do more.
What can you give? What kind of little gift before you go are you going to give to a young entrepreneur or a young guy in the trades? What message can you leave them with about jumping in yourself, right? Giving it a shot.
Going for it. I would say believe in yourself. I would say, take the chance, take the leap of faith. I would say if you have mentors, listen to them. That listen to what they're telling you, and because they've already done it, and they're going to save you some time and some headache and some energy. And I would also say that when you're looking at partners and, even people that you're going to employ, I would say that, hire and develop all of your relationships based on character and don't hyper focus on the money. And don't get me wrong, money is a very important part of it, but all of my business, everything that I've ever done, I've honestly and truly never looked at a spreadsheet. I've never looked at something and said, I need to make a change in this business because of this number. I've never done that ever in my entire life. I've always focused on treating the customer right, offering a high quality service, and all of the rest of those things that you need and that you're worrying about, it comes with it. It comes with it. If you focus on treating people right and doing a good service for the people, the money will come.
Chris Lacquement.
Yes, sir.
Lacquement. Chris Lacquement.
Yes, sir.
You're an inspiration.
Well, thank you for having me, Tommy. I
me,
appreciate it.
And you make me a better person learning these things.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Got it, my friend.
Thanks, brother.
Okay.
Thank you.